Hey guys, welcome to Mobility and Stability Are Not Opposites. During this video, we're going to talk about why it's important to use your deep core muscles to help stabilize the ribs, the lumbar spine, and the pelvis while you're using your more superficial core muscles to mobilize those areas. So I want to start with recapping what I discussed in the stability and deep core muscles video. So if you haven't looked at that, re-watch it or watch it for the first time. Your deep core musculature, transversus abdominals and pelvic floor are the two main muscles or muscle groups that we talked about. Remember, when we get lined up on the ground, we have our sacrum is down, our lumbar vertebrae is slightly off of the ground, our rib cage is down on the ground, and then I'm tucking my chin to try to get my neck down to the floor. From here, I'm going to pull in my belly button and hold the muscles that I would hold if I had to take a pee, and I should start to feel that line of tension along the belly button spread to other areas of my torso, because remember, the TVA goes all the way around. All right, from here, I'm just going to keep my hands flat on the floor. Now, if we think back to our spinal mobility video, when we were talking about how the lumbar spine, if I move it, it will create movement in my neck and upper back. Unless we stabilize, well, now we need to really try to stabilize the thoracic and cervical vertebrae, because we're going to try to create movement in the lumbar spine while keeping our thoracic vertebrae and neck stable. And this is what is going to turn into a crunching motion. So the crunch is about me, stable pelvis, bringing the ribs down meaning this direction, bringing the ribs down towards the top of my pelvis. I'm going to do that by thinking like I'm going to do a floor cog where I activate my rectus abdominals, but instead of just doing the floor cog and letting my neck tilt back and get some hyperextension, I'm going to stabilize this so that it rises up off of the ground. And then as I come back down, I am right back down into my long spine position, as opposed to coming down and going into kind of this arched back or head arched back position. So my starting and ending position is the long spine, because my TVA and my pelvic floor are always on trying to stabilize all that. All right? And the top position is a neutral neck or cervical vertebrae like we have in the long spine position, a belly button pull in and pelvic floor hold, while I'm activating my rectus abdominals to pull the bottom of my ribs to my pelvis. Let's try this all together. We're going to start with our palms on the ground. If we get neck issues, we'll troubleshoot that after this, but start with the palms on the ground. Get into your long spine position, and you are going to slowly activate the rectus abdominals to pull the ribs down towards the hips, and the shoulders are going to rise off the ground, and your arms will just kind of slide towards your feet. So my hands are just kind of light on the ground sliding. Let's do some crunches here for 30 seconds. Ready, begin. You can try to exhale on the way up and inhale on the way down on this one. Exhale on the way up, feel the rectus abdominals pulling the rib cage to the pelvis. Inhale on the way down. Exhale on the way up, feel the rectus abdominals pull the rib cage to the pelvis, and back down. Rest. Okay, so that is our first attempt at a crunch. let's clean this up a little bit and talk a little bit more in depth about some things. Number one, a lot of people get neck pain during that. Why is that? It's because they have trouble stabilizing the neck using their deep core musculature. For right now, we're going to help that situation by putting our hands behind our head, and I'm going to chin tuck or try to get rid of that gap between the floor and my neck into my hands. And by doing that, I feel more pressure between the back of my head and my hands. If that pressure changes as I come up, so if I come up and I start to lift my neck off of my hands, guess what that means? It means I'm using my neck muscles to do the crunch. That's not what we want. We want to constantly be exerting a tucked position, force into the hands. So chin tuck into the hands. Keep that pressure between the hands and the head constant during the crunch, okay? We haven't talked much about the scapula yet. We'll dive deeper into that in a later video. But when your hands are back here, you got to make sure that you're pulling the shoulders towards the hips so that you're not shrugging up towards your ears, okay? So from the side, that's going to look like this. I'm going to pull down towards the hips as opposed to shrugging up towards the ears where my neck disappears, okay? Pull down towards the hips and chin tuck. Now we're in our long spine position with a little bit of head support, and we're pushing our head into our hands. Let's pull in our belly button, hold our pelvic floor, and let's try 5 more slow crunches. Now we're going to focus on the neck and shoulders staying stable. We already had the focus on the breathing and the feeling of the rectus abdominals on the first one. Let's now shift our focus a little bit to shoulders down, chin tucked. Let's do 5. Ready, up. And slowly lower down. Good, I felt nothing in my neck. That means I can keep going because I didn't use my shoulders or my neck to pull me up. Up. Down, that's 2. Up. Down, that's 3. As you come up, feel your low back press down into the floor. Up. 4. 1 more, and up. 5. So, on that set, we were focused on shoulders down, chin tucked, and then I threw in that last little bit of feeling the low back press down into the floor. So what's happening with that? That is our lumbar spine flexing in order to bring the bottom of the ribs down towards the pelvis. That is, when we went through our mobility video, that's what we're doing. In our floor cog and our cat-cow, we were just bringing these structures closer together. In the crunch, we're stabilizing the pelvis or the bottom structure, and the rectus abdominals will pull the ribs towards that stable structure, and when that happens, the low back will get pushed more firmly down into the floor. Why is this titled Stability and Mobility Are Not Opposites? The reason is, if I don't activate my core, my deep core musculature while I do crunches, then my ribs and pelvis will shift laterally. They can rotate separately. They can even go into an extreme hyperextension or some sort of like extreme flexion where the pelvis is flipped up. So what we're trying to do with the deep core muscles is stabilize the angles of pull. Think about this as a pulley system. If you're pulling a pulley straight down, the weight can go right up pretty easily. But if you move like 10 feet to the right of that pulley and you're trying to pull it on an angle with the weight going straight up, that rope's going to come off the side of the pulley and it's not going to be able to work as well. The deep core musculature is what is keeping our pulley system aligned, the pulley system being our rectus abdominals or our six-pack muscle. If I don't do that, then the pulley system's not going to be aligned and the rope, which is the rectus abdominal, will shift off to the side and not be able to pull optimally. So they are not opposites. We have to figure out how can we activate our deep core musculature while using our rectus abdominals. Okay, let's put it all together here, where we are going to go through all the steps together and do about 5 to 10 crunches together, okay? So first, let me get in my long spine position. Sacrum down, low back off, thoracic spine down, chin tucked. I'm going to place my hands behind my head so I can feel my head tucking into my hands. I'm going to pull my shoulders down from my ears towards my hips, and I'm going to try to get the back of my neck down towards the floor. Now just check your spine again. Hopefully that didn't shift. If it did, just fix it. Let's go pelvic floor on, TVA on. You might have seen my stomach just got pulled in a little bit. I'm going to keep stabilizing that, so I'm going to keep activating and pulling in. On my way up into my crunch, I'm going to exhale. On my way down, I'm going to inhale. I'm going to focus on pulling in the belly button, holding the TVA, so that my pelvis stays stable and that my ribs come down towards my pelvis. Let's begin. Up. That's 1. Notice how slow and controlled I'm going. Up. 2. Don't worry about how high you're getting. Up. 3. Worry about bringing the bottom of the ribs to the top of the pelvis. Up. 4. As your body starts to get fatigued, you might start to feel stuff transfer into the neck. Reset and try again. Up. 5. We're going to try 5 more here. If you're getting fatigued, you can slow it down. I don't care about how many reps. I care that you get good reps that are all in the abs. Up. 6. Up. On my way down, I can feel an active pulling apart or a weighted stretch through my abs. Up. 8. Up. 9. And up. 10. Excellent. Good work, guys. So that is the crunch, where we are focused on pulling the front part of our ribs, front bottom part of our ribs, down towards the stable pelvis by creating lumbar flexion while we are deep core stabilizing everything. So that is stable pelvis, mobile rib cage. What's the opposite of that? What if I want to stabilize the rib cage and do pelvis being pulled up to the rib cage? So that can happen, and that's called a reverse crunch. It is the same exact setup as our crunch, except now we are stabilizing the upper body and mobilizing the lower body, okay? This is a little bit more confusing because now we have our hips to think about and our legs to think about. We're gonna start this on the easiest way possible, which is just keeping our legs at this 90-degree position. Let's keep our long spine drill. You're gonna have your hands either flat on the floor here, or if you have an immovable object to hold on to that you can grab up above your head, an immovable object would be something that's as heavy as an antique wooden table, a king-size bed, the legs of a couch. Do not grab a chair. That's going to tip over on you, okay? It has to be an immovable object that you can pull on, okay? So if you are grabbing something, you're going to grab it above your head with your elbows at 90 degrees, and you're going to stabilize like this. If you don't have something to grab onto, you will just stabilize here with your palms flat on the floor like that. I'm going to do this with my arms like this so that I can show you guys and you have the best view of the side of my body. Okay, so let me show you one reverse crunch. I'm going to try to stabilize my ribs and mobilize my lower body. It looks like this. So that was 2 reverse crunches. What you should have noticed is that there was limited movement up here, and the pelvis was shifting into a posterior tilt or a lumbar flexion as I was pulling the lower part of my body up towards the stable rib cage. It's the exact opposite of the crunch in that I am flexing my lumbar spine as I do it, and I should feel, instead of my rib cage coming off the ground, my tailbone comes up off the ground. Let's try 5 of these together. Let's get set up. Either you're anchored to an immovable object with your hands attached to it like so. Palms can be flat on the floor here. It will always be easier to have an anchor because you can counterbalance, all right? So if you have that option, choose that. I'm going to have my hands here just so you can see. So let's get in our long spine drill. We want to feel sacrum on the floor, lumbar off the floor, thoracic down on the floor, and chin tucked. I'm pulling in my pelvic floor. I'm pulling in my belly button. Now I'm thinking of that pulley system. It's all aligned here because my deep core is on. Now, my rectus abdominals, which connects right down on my pubic bone, is going to pull my pelvis up towards my ribs. Try to exhale as you come up. Inhale on the way down. Let's try to move slow and controlled. Set it, pull in, and begin. Up. 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 And up. Good. Rest. Okay. Now some troubleshooting things. Number 1, if you were doing that right, you may have noticed that the reverse crunch is a little bit harder than the regular crunch. It is harder in the sense that it's heavier because we have to move all of our leg weight as opposed to the crunch where we're just moving this little bit of our upper body. It can be a little bit easier though if you have trouble getting the crunch out of your neck, okay? So practice both of them. Try to see how they're the same movement, just one side stable, the other side's mobile, and then you flip them. And that might help you get insight onto why you keep activating your neck, okay? You'll notice when I do my reverse crunch, if you look here at my neck, one of the first things that'll happen when I go to lift my legs is my head will get pulled towards my hips, okay? Watch this again. You'll be able to see it in my lumbar spine. I'll lift, and my whole head slides that way, and my pelvis tilts anteriorly. If you feel any kind of slide going down like that, it means one thing and one thing only. It means that your deep core musculature is not being squeezed or squeezed enough, or it's not yet strong enough to help you stabilize while lifting your legs. So in that case, I would recommend holding on to something definitely above your head so that it'll help you stabilize. So if I put my hands here, It's a lot easier because I have some counterbalance and I can keep my head down, okay? But if you go to lift your feet and you feel sliding, that means you're not activating those deep core stabilizers. All right, let's try our last set of 10 here, and then we'll call it a day. All right, reverse crunch, TVA, pelvic floor, ribs are neutral, pelvis is neutral, chin is tucked. I got my TVA pelvic floor turned on, okay? Let me put my hands here, make it even better for me. And let's begin. 10 at your own pace. Up. 1, 2, 3. If you start to straighten out your legs, it will be harder. 4. If you keep them bent and tucked nice and tight, so heels closer to the butt, it will be easier. Start off easy, and then you can start to work your way out to this position. And 10. So remember, stability and mobility in the spine are not opposites. They work together to help arrange good, more optimal angles of pull. Okay? When your deep core is on, and you want to move, you use your superficial muscles. Okay? If you're moving without your deep core on and trying to mobilize the spine, it's just not going to be as efficient. Remember, if you're doing the crunch, pelvis is stable, ribs come down to hips. If you're doing the reverse crunch, ribs are stable, pelvis comes up to the ribs. Spinal stability and spinal mobility are not opposites.